Good morning. It's 10:30. The live streaming has started, so Kevin told me I have to get up here and start this presentation. So good morning, everyone. How are you today? Good. So I'm Rachel Alvadrez. I'm the Associate Vice President of Enrollment Management Services of Atlantic University. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all here today, especially Katy Kane, our presenter, who's up here, and you'll see her in just a moment. So first, I'd like to thank everybody here who's in attendance today. The President and Executive Director, Kevin Tedeschi, ARE board members, members of the ARE and staff of AU, staff of ARE, students, alumni, family and friends, maybe they're live streaming. And thank you for coming today to support Atlantic University and our student Katy Kane as she finishes one of the most difficult and most important projects of her time here at Atlantic University. I also want to remind you we are live streaming. So people are watching us through the video, through the live stream on YouTube. And when I sent out the invitation, people from all over the country and all over the world said they would be joining us today. So in addition to everyone sitting here, we have a population out there in the world. No pressure. So I would like to take a moment of silence. And before we do so, if everyone would take out their cell phones and turn them off. Or check to make sure they're off. I always check mine because I probably have turned it back on. Thank you. So finding your comfortable seat, maybe closing your eyes, maybe taking a few deep breaths and moving into the silence. Mother, Father, God, we thank you for your presence with us today and for supporting everyone, especially our wonderful presenter. In love and light, we pray together. Amen. So what are we going to do today? We are going to listen to and watch Katy Kane's wonderful presentation. So we have a culminating project, and that's what Katy is presenting today. And this culminating project, and I know a couple of you in this room have done these before, is the final project that the student completes at the end of their journey with Atlantic University. Now, not all students choose to do this culminating project. Some will take 2 courses in lieu of the project. Neither is greater than the other. But the project allows the student to delve a little bit more into their area of research, talk about who they are, delve into transpersonal studies, and then get up here and present that to everyone. So this project requires a good deal of work, which I think anyone in this room who has completed one would agree. And it really is a culmination of all of their studies here at Atlantic University. So after Katy has completed her presentation, there will be a question and answer period. First, we open it to faculty, and then, of course, to the public at large. And Katy and I have talked about questions, and you can ask her anything pertaining to her project that you'd like. One thing I do want to interject, and it just came to me, you probably walked in and saw black plastic. That's not a haunted house. The bathrooms are on the 2nd floor, so you can take an elevator up or take the stairs. If you need help, most people in this room know how to get upstairs to the bathrooms, and they're beautiful. So they're brand new and gorgeous. So you can go take a look if you like. After Katy is done and the questions have been asked and answered, Kevin Tedeschi is going to come up and do closing remarks. And Katy is actually officially done, so we will be giving her her diploma today. So we'll do some pictures and give her diploma, which will be really fun. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Bunny Ponclame, who's not here. She will be here in just a moment. I'm probably going too fast for Kevin in the sound booth. Bunny is, Dr. Ponclame is Katy's first reader and her mentor for this project, and she lives in the San Francisco Bay Area and couldn't fly in, but she did record a video, which is coming. She
Hello, I'm Bunny Payne-Clemay, here to introduce the talented writer Katy Kane, who has written a creative, culminating project in 2 parts. The first part consists of an exploration of creativity and dreaming, in which she interweaves her own process with a discussion of theory. Her process of several dreams resulted in a children's story that later became a political fable, 3 little cards in their third rail journey. Here's what Katy has to say about this story, which is the second part of her culminating project. This story is about 3 little card characters on a train journey for the good of mankind. While enjoying their role in life very much, they encounter danger and tragedy along the way, leading to the urgent need to find someone to rescue them. This story was originally intended to be a simple children's book, but it evolved into a political fable and/or comic book. Here's a little bit about Katy herself. She has a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Mississippi University for Women, 1983, and a diploma from Sheffield School of Interior Design, 1993. She has been married to Rob Kane since 1983, and their journey in the U.S. military has taken them to Florida, Maryland, Germany, and even Baghdad. During this journey, she served as a volunteer in thrift shops and gift shops, an embassy nurse at the American Embassy in Ankara, Turkey, and a nurse in York Hospital in York, Maine. Here's something that Katy has to say about herself. I am currently pursuing my master's degree in transpersonal studies at Atlantic University. My published short story memoirs are Dream Believer in NationalDreamCenter.com and Hometown Celebrity in Dreamtime magazine. Hometown Celebrity was translated into Spanish at the request of a psychologist for a website in Barcelona, Spain. I am also the first vice regent of the Mount Vernon chapter of the Daughters of American Revolution in Alexandria, Virginia, along with being the writer of the Indian Minute for the Mount Vernon Crier. I'm a member of the International Association for the Study of Dreams, the Association for Research and Enlightenment, and the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian. So welcome Katy, here to describe her creativity project on dreams and creativity.
Bunny had to record that 3 times. It's very cute. She's very cool, isn't she, Bunny? So, Katy, are you ready? Come on up to the stage, Katy, while Kevin gets your PowerPoint together.
Is he ready?
Are you on?
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. I'm happy to be here to present my culminating project entitled Dreaming and the Creative Process. To begin, I'd like to thank Bunny Payne-Clemay and Lloyd Arbach. I'm grateful for the support and guidance that they offered to me as my mentors as I headed down an uncertain road to creating my culminating project. As mentors, they helped me to stay on track, not only on this project, but in the classroom setting as well. I value their opinions, and I want to thank them again for their time and efforts to assist me in reaching my goal. I'd also like to tell you a little bit about my background, which I feel affected the characters and the story content of my project. I learned about Edgar Cayce at a very young age in church, shown here in a photo taken in Sunday school at St. Mark Methodist Church in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1965. I'm the only kid who's smiling, indicating for sure that I had fun being there. In my little world, church and home were intertwined. Church was a normal and comfortable part of our life. I learned about life there and at home, about right and wrong and good and evil. These topics figured heavily into my book. I was still in the formative years in this picture, and my experiences there at that church heavily influenced my life and my positive view of the world in general. It is this positive religious background that made it completely comfortable for me to accept the teachings from Edgar Cayce about dreaming and to embrace the topic of dream interpretation wholeheartedly and without any reservations whatsoever. I never knew the meaning of my dreams, but would often relate the more unusual ones to my family. I never really did anything proactive with dreams until I entered Atlantic University's Transpersonal Study Master's Degree program. The classes, the inner life, dreams, meditation, creativity, and imagination, and becoming a teacher of dream work and dream interpretation were ultimately helpful in garnering material for writing, which is something I never thought I'd be doing. As the dream classes instructed, I kept a dream journal. That's when the floodgates opened. Suddenly, I had an endless supply of topics for writing material, because the more I wrote down my dreams in that journal, the more complex and numerous the dreams became. I began to interpret them as well, giving me insight into my own views and dredging up old memories in the process. The combination of dream topics and life memories being woven into a story was something I was interested in pursuing. Having vivid memories of what it was like to be a child, I knew I could draw on that inspiration to enhance the dream material. Dreams were always interesting to me, but I didn't know what they meant unless it was a literal translation. The idea of a concept coming through in a dream just didn't register with me until I began interpreting my dreams. I found the dream classes, as well as the nonfiction writing on transpersonal subjects class, to be extremely valuable to me personally and also in the creation of my project. The dream classes set me up with the topics in my dream journals, and the writing class helped me to develop the material into something readable. My life experiences and memories helped to fill out the characters and situations based on the unusual things I've seen in my lifetime. I was taking the class Becoming a Teacher of Dream Work and Dream Interpretation when I had a wish fulfillment dream. I was observing a beauty pageant, wishing that I could have taken part in it. To explain why I had the dream about this particular topic, I need to relate a bit of my personal background. I was a pageant girl during my teens and early 20s. Despite my parents' objections, I entered the beauty contest with the hope of winning. My dream while taking the class in December of 2014 was as follows. I was in the back of an auditorium and I saw that a beauty pageant was taking place on stage. I was astonished when I realized all the contestants were middle-aged like me. I even recognized them as some old classmates from back in my high school days. I watched them and I thought about how much I wish I could have been in the pageant too. And in a split second, I was catapulted onto the stage with them. It was time for the talent portion of the contest. I began to sing. My voice was so beautiful. I was thrilled when they announced that I was the winner. In reality, I never won a pageant. The dream, when interpreted, stirred up something in the back of my mind. My parents suspected that all the pageants were rigged because of politics. So emerged the topic of fraud and politics. It proved to be a heads up when I recognized the same topics in the next dream, an even more incredible one. I had another dream in December of 2014. I had quickly descended into sleep after prayer and meditation, in which I gave myself a dream suggestion. I need a topic for my culminating project. I then had what was for me a really wild and unusual dream in which I saw darling little card people. They were cartoon-like characters similar to fairies or elves, but they were just little cards, small enough to fit in my palm. They all had human characteristics along with one other distinction. They were related to each other, so they all had the last name that was the same, Card. The tiny card people had an elfin quality to them, but it might have been their size alone that gave me that impression. One thing's for sure, they desperately wanted me to pay attention to them. They did not speak, but conveyed their message to me with their mind. The characters were entertaining me as if I was attending a show and seemed quite anxious to please me and show me what they could do. Then suddenly the mood changed. The cards revealed to me that they were being abused. They conveyed to me their displeasure with the state of the world and their part in it. They were extremely distressed at what was happening to them. as they felt human beings were using them in unethical ways. Even though the cards themselves had no control over the way certain people were misusing them, they had still developed a collective guilt about what they had ultimately become, enablers of government waste and the poster boys of socialism. Consequently, they felt the country was heading in the wrong direction, and they knew they were part of the problem. I then heard an unknown male voice say, "Royal flush, the house of cards." Then the dream was over. I didn't understand the dream at first. I wrote down the dream characters' names in my journal upon awakening and was surprised to see what it looked like on the written page. Ebb T, Ra C, and W. Elf Air were the names of the characters. When I saw the characters' names next to each other, I realized who the card people were and what they were trying to tell me. I realized Ebb T was an EBT card, a type of debit card that the government loads money onto for the entitlement programs, to use. You can see this button at the checkout counter at a grocery store next to the debit and credit. Ra C was, of course, the race card, and W. Elf Air represented the welfare programs. I was initially disappointed that this was the topic that came to me in the dreams, because I definitely had my fill of politics when I worked at the American Embassy in Ankara, Turkey over 25 years ago. The card people in my dreams represented government entitlement programs, which, while serving a legitimate and essential purpose, seemed to be morphing into something not originally intended. Somehow I needed to reflect that in my project. In unraveling the meaning of those words, royal flush, the house of cards, I discovered that a royal flush is related to the game poker, which is an unbeatable hand and contains, among other cards, an ace, a king, a queen, and a jack. The cards in my book would ultimately be these very cards. Wikipedia says poker is a family of gambling card games. In reading this passage, I cannot help but notice the terms family and card. As it turns out, my cards would be a family. In the combination of cards and poker, some of them remain hidden until the end of the game. This would play into the surprise ending of my book, which has been my trademark way of writing stories in the past, revealing a name that no one expects. Playing cards also gives another clue in the interpretation. Something was being played. The fact that the characters, once they introduced themselves to me and happily performed for a while, began to cry indicated that something was going wrong in the game. The flush was not literally a toilet flushing, but a symbol that something was being discarded. I determined what was being wasted. It was money, opportunity, and common sense. The plan for my creative project was now clear. I was going to take the basic idea, welfare reform, that was presented in my dream and turn it into a book, striving to make it unobjectionable to other people and hopefully change a few minds. I did feel the current path the country was following had gone awry, and politicians were even unwilling to broach the subject under the current conditions. In this important presidential election year, no one is talking about the subject occurring in my dream. However, it's likely that everyone is interested in it, they're just afraid to bring it up. The dream insisted that I bring it up. The card characters in my book were to be a family with a special purpose here on earth, to help people by promoting health and welfare with a full understanding of the power of diversity and equality under the law. However, as we all know, even with good intentions, sometimes unintended consequences occur when no one's watching the till and things start to get out of hand. I felt myself that the entitlement programs had become a real mess. I typed the words entitlement mess on Google. The words third rail came up. By definition, Wikipedia says the third rail of a nation's politics is a metaphor for any issue so controversial that it is charged and untouchable. Any politician or public official who dares to broach the subject will invariably suffer politically. I concluded that this certainly fit the topic I wanted to discuss. Then I remembered my husband had said something about the country being off track. I thought of the term third rail as potentially being an idea that the story could be about a train that's gone off the track. I read further. When I researched the term third rail in a railway, it was described as the exposed electrical conductor that carries high voltage power. Stepping on the high voltage third rail usually results in electrocution. The use of the term in politics serves to emphasize the shock that comes from raising the controversial idea and the political death or political suicide that the unaware or provocative politician would encounter as a result. I gave my book a title, Three Little Cards and Their Third Rail Journey. I had moments of doubt and worry during the creation of the project. I told my husband I was very concerned about it and didn't know what to do next because it is an awkward subject. He was about to get on an airplane and fell asleep thinking about my problem. When he talked to me after he landed, he said he'd had a dream about something called Texas Hold'em. When I looked up that term online, I read it's a variation of the game poker. Aha, there was the word card again. He mentioned that many important and beneficial civil rights and social programs were implemented and significantly expanded while a Texan was in the White House back in the 1960s. According to the Texas state legislature, the game Texas Hold'em originated in a town called Robstown, Texas. This is interesting to me because my husband's name is Rob. So that's how a major character, the Big Texan, was written into the book. This was not the first time my husband and I have dreamed potential solutions for one another. Once the character was in place, I could easily go back in history and define a few more who had led the programs, specifically the Squire of Hyde Park, who had started it all. I needed a plot for the story. The idea that a card game was being played was obvious in the meaning of the dream. It wasn't a literal card game in the ordinary sense, but a little private card game dreamed up by the Squire of Hyde Park. In writing a story, I found that a formula helps to tie it together. I needed to give the set of characters one common denominator other than just being a family of cards. Since the card characters had already performed for me in the dream, it was easy to imagine the kinds of things that they would do, but I needed more than that. They had to be on some sort of helpful mission, too. Once again, I considered a train journey with the cards as passengers on a train for goodwill that veers off track because it's been taken over by a conductor with a hidden agenda. It would be easy to imagine, too, because my family worked in the railroad industry. This is my grandfather in the 1920s. And this is my dad in the 1940s. Dad worked for the railroad for nearly 40 years. Even my nickname is the name of a train. So the common denominator I chose for all the characters in the book was the train. But now I face the stark realization I was writing a book on politics. Now that the topic based on my dream was in place, I had to take the hot button topic of the entitlement programs and make it palatable. The whole thing felt awkward, as I said. I was aware that I had to be mindful and respectful of those using the cards. Above all, I felt the card characters had to have hearts of human beings within them, along with human traits, so people would feel an affinity and compassion for them. I didn't really know how the story was going to end. I just let it take off and see where it wanted to go. My creative intuition reminded me that there had to be a lesson in the story, and it had to be based on what those cards revealed to me in that dream. Remembering that the cards were suffering and wanted my help reminded me that it would not all be fun and games. The subject of welfare reform is quite serious in reality, so I needed to present obstacles and bring in a villain. I began to develop the characters. The origin of Eb T. At first, I thought his name might present a problem with being acceptable to readers. Then I remembered that Southern names are often two syllables or words, like Ernest Ray or Jack Benny in Coal Miner's Daughter, or Ernest T. Bass from the Andy Griffith Show. After remembering Ernest T. Bass, I realized the reader would most likely have no problem accepting the name Eb T. In the dream, he reminded me of a character on a TV show when I was growing up. It was called Green Acres. The actor who played him, Tom Lester, a fellow Mississippian, visited our school when I was in about the 3rd or 4th grade. His presentation in our school auditorium was about religion. The auditorium was packed that day as he revealed how he discovered God's plan for him. I remember that day vividly, so I drew on that memory to help create this character who exuded extreme self-confidence and showmanship, just like this man did on the TV show and in real life. Because of my positive religious background, I also wanted to bring religion into the story somehow without anyone blatantly noticing. Using this man as a character in my story was enough to satisfy me that a religious character was now in the book. The origin of W.F. Ayer. W. Elf Air was a combination of several characters, the likes of which included Mikhail Baryshnikov, who I saw in New York City 36 years ago. And he was sitting 2 tables away from me, and I couldn't stop staring at him because he looked so perfect. So he had the body of Mikhail Baryshnikov, but W. Elf Air had the personality and enthusiasm of health and fitness guru Richard Simmons. Very upbeat and enthusiastic, getting everyone up and exercising at the train depot so they'd be ready for their future job interviews that they didn't even have yet. He insisted that everyone join in. This idea came from a bus tour I took in Hollywood. The driver waited a bit in front of Richard Simmons' house, and he told us one time Mr. Simmons had actually come outside and motioned for all the tourists to come off the bus, and he had them exercising on his front lawn. W. Elf Air had a distinctive face. He was unlike any human I've ever met. He reminded me of a time when I was in the Brownies, the early requirements of becoming a Girl Scout. When we had a Brownie meeting, we had to walk up to the front of the room and put our dues, a dime, into the back of the ceramic elf's head. The brownie gold elf face is what W. Elf Air's face looked like in my dream. By definition, a brownie is a figure in folklore that's another name for an elf. The brownie gold is symbolic of money, which is a major factor in my book. The origin of Rossi. Rossi was such a sweet thing, and the best description I can give you is that he was like the younger version of Clarence the Angel in It's a Wonderful Life. He was non-confrontational, understanding, shy, but with a sense of humor and boyishness. His visual appearance was a little bit sloppy and unkempt like Clarence, but you couldn't help but love him, his beautiful smile and his kind spirit. But his actions reminded me of the Ghost of Christmas Present from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, not from a physical standpoint, but in the manner of his mission in life. Like the ghost, Rossi had the power to make people apologize and make things right again. So this is the Ghost of Christmas Present with his horn of plenty that he would wave around to make people behave themselves. The origin of the squire. I envisioned the squire to be like Mr. Moneybags from the game Monopoly. To me, he symbolized money, which was necessary for setting up the little private card game. The squire wisely prepared for the programs to be supported in the future by someone that he himself had chosen. The origin of the Big Texan. The Big Texan was a reference to the Marlboro Man, a giant Marlboro Man billboard who reigned atop a Space Needle tower in the town of Ankara, Turkey, when we lived there in 1989 to 1991. The Turks would rally to the side of the tower to see the Marlboro Man billboard while they dined, while the Americans preferred the side with its view of the city's mosques and historic buildings. We used to joke the tower was eventually going to lean because it had too many people on one side, the side of the Marlboro Man. The origin of the villain. The character of the villain is primarily based on my late dad's final boss when he worked for the railroad. The victim on the train ride represents my dad. Once the train was put into the book as a vehicle for the idea, my dad heavily influenced the characters and upheaval in the train ride. Having worked for the railroad during his long career, his final years working there were miserable because of a new boss that the railroad board sent in. The new boss had no experience in the train world, and no one could figure out how in the world he got that job. He wouldn't listen to my dad or anyone else, regardless of the fact that most of them were career railroad men. Yet the higher-ups of the railroad saw fit to send him in, and he was doing things that were very wrong. His actions helped to secure the downfall of the railroad. During my dad's final weeks before he passed away, we talked about a lot of things, including what happened at the end of his career and the things that man had done. I can't elaborate on them as he might still have relatives alive today, but I can safely say that man ended my dad's career just the same as if he'd thrown him on the third rail. The villain, Vito, was also a reference to the lead character in The Godfather, as per the things my dad told me about his boss. In fact, Dad said he worried for years after he retired and moved away that they were going to come after him for what he knew. As far as the movie The Godfather, I never idolized the character of Vito, although I know many people do. The Italian name of Vito didn't seem to fit the story of being on a train at all, but a twist on the name, Vito with an E instead of an I, was definitely usable because it had political undertones and fit the current situation in Washington. I needed a title for my villain, though, The name Vito just didn't seem to satisfactorily imply his prestige and high rank. Again, I drew on life memories here. Dad passed away while I was attending Atlantic University. A few days later, an old high school friend of mine, young adult author Elizabeth Langston, wrote a story and posted it on Facebook as her tribute to him. I posted it in our forum for the class. The title of her story was "To Sir with Love," because she always called my dad Sir. My culminating project was, in a small way, a tribute to my dad, so the title Sir in Sir Vito is in homage to him. He would have loved it. The origin of the hero. The cards needed a hero, someone they could believe and trust. It turned out to be a member of their own family. I'm not going to reveal who the hero is, since I don't want to spoil the surprise ending of the book, but for those that dislike him, they would think he was just an opportunist who conveniently showed up to be the hero in the book. For those that like him, they would think it was cool that he graciously showed up right on time to be the hero in the book. The choice of hero made it into the story primarily because of his reference in the card gaming world and timing in entering the political race. He was just in the right place at the right time, and when I was at an impasse in the story and I needed to win the game, I had to pull the trump card to win the game and save the train. It became a sad journey. I tried drawing the characters in the story, but I realized I lacked the artistic skills to adequately portray them. Therefore, like the cards, I reached within my own family to find a solution. I called my son Mike from California and offered to buy a plane ticket for him to come home from Los Angeles and embark on a journey of a different kind, providing illustrations for 3 little cards and their third rail journey. He was able to capture the spirit of the characters very well, I think. The villain needed to be a memorable and emotionless character, so he was drawn that way. His uniform is symbolic in that it is unyielding, as was his character. His uniform was intentionally stiff with a high collar. There were no wrinkles in it, indicating that he stood there stoically rather than sitting around relaxing like a normal person would do. In a way, he was non-human to me and more like something from another planet sent in to wreak havoc. He also didn't have a heart, which is self-explanatory when you read the book. I envisioned Vito as an alien from another planet, totally disconnected from our reality here on planet Earth. This was demonstrated in the text of the book with his total disregard towards information from seasoned professionals in his quest to fulfill his destiny. Meandering through the hills, he rarely speaks to the cards. He has nothing in common with them except that he's driving their train. So he needed sort of a stoic, detached look, which I believe Mike captured. I especially like the rose-colored glasses effect he created, as it's the only color used in the illustrations of the book, with the exception of the heart on the love train. The rose-colored glasses worn by Sir Vito lent a Wizard of Oz feeling to the book for me. However, in the book, the rose-colored glasses have a more symbolic meaning. One is that the bloom is off the rose regarding the entitlement programs. In other words, they aren't looking so pretty anymore. The other is that Sir Vito thought he would look cool and more like the Squire of Hyde Park if he wore those little round glasses. His being a rookie and newcomer, he thought it would make him look like he fit in and he belonged, so that no one would question what he was about to do, take the train in a different direction. The fact that he chose rose-colored lenses was to intimate that he fully intended to look at his own little world through rose-colored glasses, meaning that he would be seeing things other than they actually were, fantasy rather than reality. In what I felt was one of Mike's best illustrations, this is the most dramatic and tragic scene in the book, Murder on the Love Train. I included the murder in the story for a reason, to emphasize the symbolic death that would happen to the entitlement programs if they continued to veer off course and eventually self-implode. Despite the hopelessness illustrated here, the book does have a happy ending. In writing 3 little cards and their third rail journey, I developed the 3 characters based on a card dream. After interpreting the dream's meaning, I developed a storyline based on what it revealed, politics and fraud. Bringing in my son Mike to help provide the visual images of the characters to enhance the story for my readers was a great idea. Some of the character development was inspired during daily walks along the Potomac. I found I was more open to mind's suggestions as I took those walks. Information was funneling into my head so fast that I had to hurry home quickly to write it all down. And I would estimate that 90% of the story came from those walks on the water, where I had a clear view of the Capitol building and the Washington Monument, famous, of course, for politics. Being close to the water seemed to have a creative effect on me. It's as if I had to be close to the water to receive the ideas. In Three Little Cards and their third rail journey, there were a lot of liberties taken to suit the plot. The absurdity of the characters based on FDR and LBJ having no objection to the final conductor was part of the fun of the story to me. The cards themselves avoided a stereotype and deliberately reached out to the other side when it became imminent that they needed to be rescued. The cards were not only distraught by the way the recipients of the programs were behaving, they were feeling sad themselves, not realizing yet that the people were stealing their joy by taking away their joy of giving. And the people themselves had become incapable of gratitude and thankfulness, so everyone was equally miserable. Even the train itself began to take on human qualities of bleeding and sickness. The solution was to bring someone on board who could stop the train. It turned out that none of the individual cards could have saved the train alone. It took all of them, plus their card cousins' leadership, to make it happen. If there had been discord among them, or if they just hated them for having money, the train would have wrecked, killing them all and the programs. By saving them all, the cousin made it possible for the love train to have new beginnings. On a side note, there were new beginnings for me as well. I enjoyed spending time walking by the water, and I wanted to simplify my life so I'd have more time to write. I took action, made a radical change, and last week my husband and I moved on board a boat. This never would have happened if I hadn't spent so much time in contemplation walking by the water. My creative project question was to determine whether or not dreams enhance creativity in writing. I believe the answer is yes. The card dream gave me increased clarity and vision in both dream recall and interpretation. As I explored potential story ideas, I was hyper-aware of things around me that I had never noticed before. In other words, I was mindful. In receiving my dream of the cards, I was given a topic to write about that came as a complete surprise to me. This particular dream reached deep within my subconscious to tap into my belief system. Anyone who has a belief system is going to be passionate about heartfelt causes. Therefore, I developed creativity because I cared about the subject matter previously hidden away in my mind. Even though people do not want to talk openly with each other about the underlying challenges that we will collectively face together, perhaps the people we should be talking to anyway are the children. That's why the characters were presented to me as cartoon-like and elfin, something like a child would listen to and potentially watch. I just had to learn to recognize the way the dream spoke to me. It gave me a visual image to build on. In my case, the role of dreaming and creative writing was not only to present an appropriate subject, but to put me on high alert for ideas to convey the point. I was really paying attention to what was going on around me while I was writing this book. Dreams can be the catalyst for amazing stories based in subject matter dear to the dreamer. I believe the message of my dream was that the spirit of charity must always be tempered with wisdom. That includes enacting and obeying laws to provide safeguards against how the entitlement money can be spent. Writing this book has been a labor of love. I hope the book will inspire and entertain, and that its hidden message of helping others will resonate. It is yet to be seen if this book is a case of life imitating art or maybe the other way around. Therefore, I intend to keep an open mind. I look forward to a simpler life, having time for writing rather than cleaning a big house, dreaming rather than waking up early to commute, and living on the water, which seems to inspire my dreams in writing. It is also ironic that we are living in a marina called the Gangplank, which to me symbolizes what I will be going through if this book ever gets published. It'll be like walking the plank. I'm aware of the criticism that I'll receive due to the third rail politics the book entails. But if it changes a few minds and sets the country headed in the right direction, writing Three Little Cards in their third rail journey will have been worth it. In conclusion, I wanted to thank my son Mike for coming home and assisting in bringing my characters to life. This is him hard at work drawing the characters. Not only did he do great work, it was wonderful to spend time with him, as I don't get to see him or my son Rob Jr. nearly as often as I would like. And that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. He's turning them on. Do you have a mic? Okay. pointing to Don. Don has a mic. All right, I'd like to open it up to questions. Thank you, Katy. Back up.
I'm going to ask. Thank you, Katy. First of all, I want to say that the whole means by which the characters and the plot came together are certainly a perfect example of the transpersonal process in itself. So thank you for sharing that all with us. So often when we have a dream, and especially the way you've pulled this together in terms of dreams relating to perhaps things going on outside of us, did you get a sense perhaps that there was also a personal meaning for you in terms of while you're going through this process, what did you learn in terms of your own transpersonal changes, let's say?
I wasn't aware that I was even thinking about politics, because a couple of years ago into the program, there was a student in one of our classes, and he said, I don't even watch television anymore. It just upsets me. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm not going to do it either. So I stopped. So the fact that I was even writing about politics when I wasn't even following it shocked me, and I wasn't happy about it, because it's like I told Lloyd, I really wanted to write something about ghosts. So this was not what I had intended to do, but it was so incredible, I felt like I had to. So that was just a surprise, that something that I didn't think I was thinking about must have been, or it wouldn't have come out that way. And then, being more aware of what's going on around me and noticing every little thing, strange things, like there were 3 cards in the book, and then 3 kept coming up in the dreams. I was dreaming 3 over and over and over again. And then when I went for a walk on the path, I was trying to think of something, and I thought, I wonder if I'm just doing the wrong thing by writing about this, this topic. And right before me were 3 quarters in a row, perfectly in a row, and there was no one on the track ahead of me and no one behind me. Did you take the quarters? Yeah. I sure did. I felt like the universe was giving me those quarters and saying yes. They were shiny and new quarters. That was the weirdest thing, because it was so dirty around there. It's like someone had just put them there. So I know that's kind of strange, but that was just, I noticed things like that. I just thought that was just really interesting. Anybody else?
I have a mic, Neil.
Hi, Katy. What a
Hi.
wonderful culminating project.
Thank you.
Just outstanding. Really made me think a lot. And by the way, I have walked along that same river. I worked in the same area for many, many years in L'Enfant Plaza. And my window of my office looked out over the gangplank. And I had a boat there for a while myself. So I know very, very well where you live in that area. I'm interested in this wonderful way that you wound your dreams, your meditations, your daily walks along the river together, that integrating process. And I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more of that with us, how you do you sometimes go back and redream aspects of it? Just, this is no test, but if you want to share how you sort of integrate all of that, I'd be interested in that. Thank you.
I was really surprised, because I was really at an impasse when I couldn't get further than a certain point, because I couldn't sleep well, because I'm going through menopause, and the hot flashes were just awful, and I couldn't sleep, and I went on the walk because I was gaining so darn much weight that I had to walk. Well, 3 miles a day, when you're walking, staring straight ahead with that water, I almost went into a trance or something, because I started seeing the characters doing things, especially one funny thing that the Texan did, and I actually started laughing. And I hoped that no one could see me, because I knew they'd think I was crazy walking down the track, just bent over laughing at what he did. And then, of course, when I got home, I had to quickly get it down. But once I started writing it, it was almost like someone else was writing it, because the sentences were coming in full form. And it's like I was taking dictation, and I couldn't believe it. There was very few changes that I had to make in it. But at the same time, I was holding myself back, saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. But it was like, yes, you will, yes, you will. So it was all of that. And then, like I said, my religious background, being really comfortable with Edgar Cayce, that helped a lot. I visited here with my mother when she had cancer, and she was about to faint, and she said, I think I'm going to go lay down over there. Well, it was Edgar Cayce's couch. So I'm really glad she didn't. I said, no, let me hold you up here for a while. So it felt right, and my parents were very supportive, especially my dad when I started this program. So that was something I realized that maybe my dad, it was a way of celebrating my dad, the railroad, despite what happened. He got his pension, so it all turned out good. But it was a little bit of every part of my life went into this book, because there was someone that I had seen along the way that one little thing stuck in my head. And I started remembering childhood memories vividly, which was surprising, like people. And I could pinpoint times and what they were wearing and what lunchbox they carried. It was that kind of detail that was really like somebody had sanded me a wire down, and it was a live wire. And I was just getting information right and left. But when my son came home, he's like, okay, you got to tell me what you want. So I had to spend time with my son and explain, who knew me very well, what was in that character. And he's like, why is that important? I'm like, because of this. And it would be some little obscure thing, but it turned out that it made the picture, It made it what it was, so.
Do you get up at night, when you wake up at night, and journal very quickly, or do you wait till the following morning?
Yes, I have to. The night I had the dream about the cards, I got up 7 times. Because Dr. Henry Reed told us when we were taking his class to drink a whole bunch of water before you go to bed, so you have to get up to go to the bathroom. So I did. And he said, and when you lay back down, you tell yourself you want to go back to that dream, and I did. But when I went back to the dream, they were all watching me from the stage, and I had to tell them to let's see the show again. And then they would start doing their things again.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Outstanding.
Any other questions?
Hey, Katy, thank
Hi.
you so much for an insightful and creative journey along that we went with you. Really wonderful how you tied in your family as well. And I'd like to know your personal process for maintaining your dream journal. How do you do it? Do you write it? Do you record things? What is your process? That's question 1. And question 2, if you can go into more detail also about when you had this specific dream, the feeling inside that made it really so poignant and powerful for you to develop this incredible project.
Okay.
Thank you.
The dream journal I just wrote in a book, like Dr. Reed told us to do. So I did that for like 3 years. And once I'd filled 4 books, I realized that I couldn't read my own scribbly writing very well. So I thought it would be better if I laid my computer next to me and had it ready to go, and I pick it up and I write it. And I don't look at I just write it. I close my eyes and I write it because I'm too sleepy. And then later on, when I need to refer to it, I can go up there and do a word search. Like if I had a dream about someone that died, I can look up their name and see when I dreamed about them, because I've had a couple of those kind of dreams. So that's helped me to locate information instead of going through all those books and scraps of paper that are all stuffed in there. And your second question was, what was that? About the feeling. Yes. The cards were so playful, and it was so much fun, and it was funny because the stage looked just like the stage where Eb T, the guy from Green Acres was, and Elvis Presley performed there in that auditorium too, in that school. So that stage was in the dream, and I'm used to being in the auditorium at that school seeing cool things when I was a little girl. So I'm watching them, and they're so playful, and they're doing all this stuff. And when they started crying, I actually felt such sorrow and tears in my own eyes. I woke up just feeling like someone was pressing on me because I felt their anguish. And that was surprising to me because I never had a dream where I woke up and felt what the characters were feeling. That was the first time that ever happened. And when I wrote it down and I told him what I had dreamed, he looked at it and he didn't get it, and I had to explain it to him, and he said, oh my gosh, you need to do something with this. I don't know what, but you need to do something with this. This is such a strange dream, and it was. And there were other parts of it that didn't make it into the book, so I could write even more if it ever did get published and I could do a sequel. There are other characters as well. I just had to focus in on the 3 because Bunny told me it would be good, again, 3. She said to keep it simple, and it would get too complex if I did too many other things. And then Lloyd told me he wanted more about the cards, what the card games meant. He wanted the poker and all of that in it. So that gave the man's point of view, or as Bunny said, Lloyd had to look through the rose-colored glasses of his profession to see what it needed as a man, to be appealing to everybody, because at first that wasn't in there. And when I discovered all that about the cards, from what Lloyd told me to look up, all of it was already in place in the book, which was incredible to me that I chose those cards. And I know nothing about cards. My grandmother used to try to make me play canasta, and I just couldn't stand it. I didn't know how anyone could play cards. So I don't even like cards, but they were so neat because they had little card pieces that extended above their shoulders. They were like wings, but they weren't, and I could see the little symbols on there. But when they got upset, they would twitter and swell up like a butterfly when it's coming out of the cocoon. Just kind of a weird thing. That's what happened to them. It was like a buzzing kind of feeling, and that's what I felt like when I woke up. I was sort of buzzing, but I was very sad, and I wanted to help them. So that was it. Yes, sir.
Previously to all your dreams here, before this all began, did you have any dreams of crossing bridges in preparation for this dream that you're about to have, where you had to leap because the bridges are not connected from one consciousness to the other? So you had to leap a gap in the middle of the bridge to the other side in order to be in a different consciousness than the body consciousness. Did you have any of those that you remember?
I had a bridge dream, but I can't remember exactly when it was, but I knew what it meant when I interpreted it.
Okay,
So that's possible.
So you're
yes.
actually being told at the beginning to prepare yourself about.
Yes, and I'm not a very good swimmer, so
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Kevin? You? Huh?
Oh, you want me up?
Kevin gets to close. I wonder if I was pointing at you.
Yeah, I wonder what I did wrong.
Thank you.
I just want to add that I think that it's, you can stay around here.
Okay.
I think it's very appropriate that this was part of her project because for those who don't know, the Edgar Cayce material is rich with dreams. In fact, Cayce interpreted approximately 900 dreams. The International Association for the Study of Dreams, which you mentioned, actually grew out of the Edgar Cayce material. And an early version of AU actually founded, with Henry Reed's help, the Sundance Community Dream Journal. So dreams are a rich part of this work. The other thing I thought was interesting is Margit Nasi, who's in the front row on the end, and I were in the first class, graduated in 1989, and my culminating project was actually a book as well on Noah. And as my father would say, what a waste of time. But anyway, so there was a lot of great stuff here, and it's my privilege to give you your diploma, which to Eva Catherine Kane, Master of Arts in Transpersonal Studies.
Thank you
Congratulations
so much.
so much.
Thank you.
Do we
Do you have a
have-
picture?
Oh, we can get a picture? Oh, there your husband. Thank you,
Thank you so much.
We're going to get together back here and have a little coffee and conversation, and thank you all for being a part of this work, and congratulations and thanks for being here today.